right, so we are recording. So tonight, CMAs and net to seller sheets. CMA, a comparable market analysis it's very valuable. No matter whether you're working with a buyer agent and you've just seen a property that they want to make an offer on, and you want to try to determine whether or not the property's listed, priced correctly, or if it's priced too low or priced too high, to help you determine what your offer strategy is going to be. A comparable market analysis can also be valuable to your seller clients, because if you run in, like I did the other day, you run into Joe Schmo at the barbecue, and he says, "Hey man, I'm thinking about listing my house. I need some help. I don't know what, I'm not sure what it's worth." Or so you get his information, you get his address, as much information about the property as possible, and you run a CMA on it and send it to him and say, "Hey, Joe Schmo, this is what I think the market value of your property is. Here's my listing strategy. Next steps would be to meet in person, do a walkthrough, and get pictures taken and get this process started." So that's a buyer and seller client. For your investor clients, maybe you have someone who's looking at flipping houses. You have a client who wants to do some flips, and they want to know, "Hey, Justin, what would this house be worth after I get it all fixed up?" Otherwise known as the ARV, or the after renovated value. Those are three, but not the only scenarios where a CMA report is very valuable to our clients. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you how I comp properties. I said this a couple minutes ago. It might vary a little bit from how Mark D'Andrea or Mark D. Hutchinson or somebody else you've trained with does theirs, but we all end up in the same ballpark. Everybody's just got a little bit of a different path to get there. So like I said, my investor client sent me a property earlier today, 1710 Rose Hill Drive, Reynoldsburg, Ohio. I have not done any prior research on this property. So I'm going to show you my process on how I will run a comp for that property. So as you can see, I'm here on the MLS. And even before we get started there, this is where we're going to formulate our CMA. But even before we get started there, I want to make sure that my information on this property is correct and accurate. So I'm going to go to the Franklin County Auditor's Property Search website, which is here. I usually have this as on my toolbar as like a speed dial type thing up here website, because I use it so much. But we're going to go ahead and search the properties first, just to make sure we have accurate details. 1710 Rose Hill. And that's going to bring us to the response page on the auditor's site here. Sorry, my phone and laptop are blowing up right now. And then I typically come down here to the bottom of the first page here, and I just want to see, okay, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's got 1,300 square foot of total finished space, not including the basement, built in 1960. There's some tax information there if I want it. I'm going to keep this tab open because I may come back to it. Next, I'm going to go to the MLS, and I'm going to see if this thing has been bought or sold recently on the MLS, and see if there's any pictures that might be able to help us. So I'm also going to research it here. 1710 Rose Hill. And it does not look like it has changed hands on the MLS anytime in the past decade or so. It's not popping up. I'm going to just make sure. Yeah, it's not popping up there. So, all right. So I'm going to start this comping process. Now, this is the way that I do it. So I always start by clicking on quick search. I always want to make sure that the property type is correct here where it says residential. If you're looking to comp land, you would pop down this drop down menu and you would select land. If you're looking at a multifamily, a duplex, triplex, quad, look at multifamily. If you're looking at commercial, there's options there for that. If you're looking at comping rentals, there's rental on here as well. So and then any custom searches that you've saved in the past will show up here at the bottom. But we're looking at residential properties today, so we're going to keep it with residential. I am going to start filtering here on the left-hand side. So I'm looking for closed properties right now. I only want to see what has sold, not temporarily off market. So I want to look at what has closed. And then I'm going to come down here. So it's going to, when you select closed, it's automatically going to filter to look at what has sold in the past year. So it goes back to, as you can see here, it goes back to July 9th, 2023, which is good for now. Subdivision type, we are looking for, or sorry, not subdivision type, subtype. We're looking at single family freestanding homes. Additional acceptance and conditions. So this would be anything if this would filter out anything that would be like a foreclosure, an online auction, a short sale, which aren't that common anymore. I don't have any knowledge that this has any additional acceptance or conditions, anything extra. So I'm going to go ahead and select none so that we don't get foreclosures and things like that that pop up in our comps because they're not going to be comparable. Okay. And now I need to verify the location first. And since this one hasn't sold on the MLS in the past, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up a new Google window. I'm going to type the address in and verify the location that way. Everybody with me so far? Anybody have questions? All right. Okay, so I'm going to open this map up here. Looking at the street view real quickly, I see that this is a single family home. It's a ranch. It looks like it's got a one-car garage. Probably, we saw that it was built in 1960. It looks like it. Probably got a basement. It might be on a slab. It's just some things that I'm noticing just from the street view. So I'm going to zoom out here on the map just to make sure we have the correct location here. I'm familiar with this area, so I'll be able to find it on the map. But if you need to, zoom out. Find some of the main crossroads here, some landmarks where you can. I know it's east of Bryce Road, west of Graham, south of Broad Street, north of 70. So that's going to give us a pretty good idea of where it is. So we're going to go back to the MLS here and we're going to narrow in on that neighborhood. Now, when Mark D'Andrea runs these comps, he tends to type this address into the MLS bar here. If it had sold prior on the MLS, it would pop up and show you the exact location. This one has not, so I skipped that step. You can feel free to do that if you'd want to when you're starting to comp a property. So this is the general area, and again, I'm going to go back to Google Maps and hone in just a little bit farther. I know that the property is Rose Hill, Splits, Bryce and Graham, Elmbrook Village, and Bryce Estates is kind of where I'm looking. So I'm going to come back to the MLS. I see Rose Hill here in the middle. I'm going to narrow down a little bit farther, and I see that it is almost 2 blocks north of East Livingston on the east side of the street. So that's going to help me know where to drop my pin. So I see Rose Hill here. I see 1 block and the house sits right about here. So what I'm going to do is, to start out, I'm going to grab my radius tool over here on the right-hand side. If you're not familiar, the MLS map has all these tools over here. You can draw a custom polygon, which we're probably going to use in a second. You can draw a radius circle. There's some other there's measurement tools there. There's some other cool stuff. So for now, we're going to grab the radius tool. We're going to drop a pin right on the location of that property, and I'm going to draw it out 1 mile to start with. And that's going to show me everything that's closed, all the single family homes that don't have any additional terms or conditions that have closed in that 1 mile radius in the past year. Now we're going to start to drill this down a little bit farther. As you can see here on the left-hand side under where it says view results, we've got 97 results. Typically, when I comp a property, I like to have at least 3 and usually no more than 5 comps. So we're going to try to narrow it down to that range so we can find out what the ARV is of this property that my investor client sent me earlier today. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to bedrooms, and it is, because we looked at the auditor's site and my client has not told me anything different. It is a 3-bed, 2 full baths. So we're going to plug those filters in. I'll go 3 and 3 on minimum and maximum for bedrooms. So I'm only looking at 3 bedrooms. And then when it comes to bathrooms, I don't typically describe whether they are full or half bathrooms. I go straight to total, and I'll go 3 and 3 there as well. If you want to if you have enough options available and you want to get really, really detailed, You can do two full, one half, or whatever you'd like. Carla, do you have a question
Is it?
or less? Anybody?
Yeah. Is it 2 or 3? I thought it was 2 bathrooms.
Oh, you're right. It is. It's two full bathrooms. Thank you, my friend.
Cool.
All right. Okay, so since we plugged those filters in, you can see we've about cut our list in half. So we've gone from 97 results, more than in half. We're down to 40 results. And we're getting there. We've got a lot that are almost right on top of that house. So I have a feeling we're going to be able to accurately um, really accurately report the market value of this property just based on what I'm seeing so far. So we're going to drill down a little bit farther on these filters. Next thing is going to be the square footage. So I know based on the auditor's site that this property is a 1,300 square foot ranch. So I typically when I go square foot documented because that's what's documented on the auditor's site. That's where the MLS pulls their data from. The ATFLS is owner provided measurements of the square footage, so a little bit less reliable. Sometimes those can be overinflated, so we want to stick to the square footage documented. And what I like to do is I like to go 300 square foot below and 300 square foot above our subject property when I'm comping the square footage. So we know it's 1,300, so I'm going to go 1,000 on the low side, and I'm going to go 1,600 on the high side. And as you can see, we've gone from 40 to 38. That only cut a couple properties out. So that tells me that a lot these homes, you know, they were all probably built in the same era, all probably very similar size. And so we've got our bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. And I am going to go ahead and narrow this down a little bit farther. And the next two things I'm going to use to narrow this down are the basement and the garage. In my opinion, those are the two most important things after the bedrooms, bathrooms, and square footage. So I'm going to go back to the auditor's site because I want to make sure this property has a full basement and not like I want to make sure it's not on a slab. If it is, we're gonna put it in there, and that's going to cut a lot of the comps down. Okay, so it says no basement on here. So it does look like this property is on a slab, and I have a feeling when I plug that into the MLS, that is going to cut our options way down. So I'm going to put no for basement. And that took about 15 away. So we're down to 21 options there. I'm going to go garage next. And I'm going to say minimum of 1, maximum of 1, since that didn't remove any. That should remove a few. Okay, we've still got 18 comps here. So does anybody have an idea of what we can do next to narrow this list down any further before before we get there? Does anybody have any ideas off the top of their head on what we can do to narrow this down further?
Maybe.
So can we do it for 6 months?
I heard
So
Nara
1
say
year.
I heard Nara say 6 months. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Harold said minimize to half mile. That's the next thing I would do as well. So we're gonna go 6 months for now. I'm gonna click on this date of July 9th, 2023. I'm gonna click forward 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. January 9th. Boom. All right, now we've got 10 options. Now I'm going to do what Harold suggested, and I'm going to cut this down to a half mile. And so there's a couple ways you could approach this, Harold. We could cut this down to a half mile, or one strategy that might be a little bit more effective than that would be to draw a custom polygon and really draw out this neighborhood here. But let's start with the half mile first. So I know that my subject property sits right about here. So let's go ahead and do a half mile. Get this accurate right on 0.5. There it is. Boom. That's going to cut a couple of those bad boys out. So now we're down to 10. Now, the other thing I was suggesting would be maybe to take a custom polygon and draw it out like at the major roads. Just kind of trace the major. Oh, I just stopped sharing my screen. Hold on, guys. Okay, so the other option would be to draw this custom polygon and draw it out on the main roads. So do something like this. But I kind of like, just geographically for this one, I kind of like the half mile better here. So I'm going to get rid of that polygon. And then I'm going to get rid of our big circle too. If you hover over these, it'll highlight which one you're choosing in yellow. So I'm going to go to the big circle and I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so now we've got 7 comps in here, guys. I haven't looked at the list yet. You know, like I said, I like to have between 3 and 5 comps that have sold. And this list of 7, I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm hoping that there are a lot of ranches on there. And if there's 2 stories or buy levels, we're going to try to maybe remove those. So let's go ahead and go to our list option here on the right-hand side, top right-hand corner. We're going to click list, and this is going to put all of our comps in a listed format. Man, it looks like they're all ranches. We have no 2 stories on here. So we're going to be able to narrow this down really, really well. Okay, so we're looking at our list format. Hopefully everybody's with us on how we got here. Bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, garage, basement, half mile. 6 months ago, we've gotten this thing really narrowed down. It's still got a lot of strong options for the comps here. We've got 7 on our list. I'd like to at least eliminate maybe 2 or 3 of these. So when I'm looking at these, I like to look at them most expensive to least expensive. So I come over here to where it says price on the top left-hand side, and I'll sort descending, meaning the most expensive will be at the top, the least expensive will be at the bottom. So as you can see here, we've got options between 229,900, so essentially 230,000 and 260,000. So we've got a really strong range, a $30,000 range there of where this property should fall. Next thing I'm going to do is I am going to just look through this information over here. Taking a quick look at the days on market. So if you look over here on the right-hand side, we can see the days on market column. I like to take a quick look at that to get a feel for how fast the neighborhood is moving. It's looking like the average is probably going to be around 10 days or so on the market. You've got a couple outliers here. This one was on the market for about 26 days, which means it was probably something was going on with it, condition or price. I'm not sure which. It looks like it was listed at 260 and sold at 260, so maybe the condition wasn't perfect. And then the rest of there's one other outlier that was on the market for 17 days. As you can see, this one was listed at 262.9, sold at 250. So I think price and condition were probably holding that one back. But I want to get a statistical eagle eye view of this neighborhood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and select all. This checkbox right here will select all 7 of these listings that I have. And just a preliminary look at this, I'm going to come up here to CMA on the top right-hand side, and I'm going to look at the 1-line CMA. This is going to be a really short and concise version of the critical information that we're looking for here. So out of the 7 options that we have there, you can see that they are all 3-bedroom. They're all 2 baths, and these are all actually 2 full baths too. There isn't even one with a half bath on there. They're all 1 story, which is great. None of these have basements. Down here at the bottom, this row here specifically is the important stuff that's going to help me determine the ARV for this property. We know that like I said, on average, houses are moving on an average of 10 days on the market in this neighborhood, with an average square footage right around 1,300, an average price per square foot of 194.06, an average list price of 247, an average sold price of 247. So things are selling right at about sold price versus list price. They're selling just above, on average, just above 100%, right around 102 or 101%. Now this is pretty rare, honestly. Out of the past 10 or 15 CMAs that I've run for my clients, it's not typical that I find one with this strong of comps in the same neighborhood. This one is really narrowed down. So what do we do next? We've got a $30,000 range here, and how do we determine, or how do we narrow this down? There's a couple different ways to do it. If I knew what the interior of this property looked like that my investor client sent me, I would use that and compare it to the interior pictures of these 7 properties, and I would try to find the ones that looked the most similar. I do notice something here though. This one that sold at 255, 6902 Bartlett Road looks almost identical to the Google Street View that I saw here for Rose Hill. If you can see here, the way that garage and front porch setup is, that looks like it's the exact same build. And, you know, hopefully it was pretty similar on the interior as well. So in this case, since I've got such strong comps here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look through the pictures really quickly and just skim through and get a feel for the neighborhood as far as are these sold prices with, do they have granite? Do they have recessed lighting? Do they have new flooring? Is the paint fresh? Are they flipped? Are they updated? Or is it Formica and maybe it's honey oak on the cabinets? Maybe the stuff's a little bit more dated. I want to try to get a feel for the comps in the neighborhood. So I'm just going to real quickly go one by one on here to the detail page and then to the photo page and just get a real quick feel for how these comps look. So this is the most expensive one in the neighborhood. And right away, when I see this, I think about Jim Ross. This might be a Jim Ross property. Let me see. It sure is. Called it. Anytime you see those list reports, statistics, and the pictures, that's a Jim Ross property from our brokerage. So that tells me this property was probably updated. It certainly was. Looks like fresh paint, new light fixtures, new cabinets, new pool, stainless steel appliances in the kitchen, subway tile backsplash, laminate hardwood, artificial hardwood floors, floor to ceiling tile in the bathroom. So updated 260. Let's look at this one, 256. This one not as updated, but still nice. Decent cabinetry. It's got some stainless steel in there. Looks like a little bit of an older style tile and backsplash in the kitchen. Carpet looks like it's okay. This looks like it was renovated sometime in the late 2000s. This one does look like it has some carpet that needs replaced in there. And this might have been one of the ones that sat on the market for a while, and that might be why. I'm wrong. That was on the market for 3 days. All right, let's keep on looking here. I want to look at the one. So this is the one that looks most similar to mine, and as far as the street view goes. So I want to get a look at the interior of this because this might tell me exactly what this property my investor is interested in. This might tell me the exact ARV based on this property if it's updated or not, and it certainly is. I see 12-inch LED light fixtures there that look new. I see new flooring. I see fresh paint. I see stainless steel in the kitchen. I see open concept cabinetry in the kitchen. Those cabinets look like they're probably painted. I don't know if that's granite. It might be Formica. I see gold fixtures in the bathroom, tile shower. So this looks like a flip. So that 256 or 255, I'm sorry, is going to be a real strong ARV for my client's property that he sent me. So, and then I'm going to go down here. I want to look at the one that sold at 230. I know cosmetically this one has to be beat up based on the other ones that I saw. It has to be. And it's not. It's not terrible. It's not great though. So honey oak cabinetry there in the kitchen. You can see this is kind of a janky kitchen setup here. No hood vent. It just kind of looks like it's thrown together a little bit. Older honey oak cabinets. Owner bedroom has double doors that lead out to the patio, which a lot of people don't like for privacy reasons. Yeah, so this one cosmetically, is not beat up per se, but it's not as quite in a good a shape as the other ones. So what I'm going to do here, I'm probably going to take, let me look at, I want to narrow this down to 3 to 5, like I said. We've got 7 here. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to remove this one and this one from the mix. That gives us 5 options between 250 and 260. I think this is a really strong, accurate range for the ARV for this property. And the next thing I'm going to do, hopefully everybody's with me and tagging along as far as how we got here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the TG Real Estate. I'm not sure who that is. I'm going to select the selected tab here, and that's going to show me the 5 properties that I have selected. Minus the we had 7. I took 2 away because they were the cosmetically the least desirable out of the mix. I've got 5 here, and I think that's solid. I could even remove one of these, honestly, if I wanted to. We've got 2 in here that are at, one's at 255, one's at 256. If I really wanted to narrow it down, which I'm going to do, I would go ahead and remove this one at 256 out of there, leave the one at 255 that's almost identical to the subject property, and keep on trucking forward. So we've got our 4 selected here. We've narrowed it down really, really well on these comps using the MLS. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to formulate a very nice looking, palatable, digestible, articulatable report for my client so that he can look at it, see everything in a nice format, and use it however he needs to. So up here, we're going to go back to the CMA tab on the top right-hand side of the MLS here. We've got our 5 selected here. And we're just going to select use selected, which is the second option here. And that's going to bring us to this screen. We're going to start customizing our CMA. This first screen, I always leave it a full CMA. I have never really messed with the quick CMA or the statistical. I guess the quick CMA we just looked at a minute ago, so I think that's what that is. The statistical might just be numbers only, no pictures or anything. I leave this as full. Statistical average field, I never mess with this. I always leave it as square footage documented. I'm not sure exactly what that changes when you mess with that. I've never touched it, so I just leave it like that. I go to next. Okay, so title of this document is going to be comparable market analysis. This is going to be for my client Dominic Valenti, and in the bottom here it always gives you a little prompt that's going to show up on the first page. This is what I write. This is what Mark D'Andrea used to write. I think he writes something different now, but I always write in here market value estimate based on sales comparison. And then next, as you can see here, these categories at the top are what we're going through page by page. So the next thing it's asking me for is information on the subject property. Now, if this property had been bought or sold previously on the MLS, all you would need to do is open up another MLS tab, extract the MLS number from that listing, and plug it in here under auto populate, and it would automatically plug in the picture and all of the information down here as far as bedrooms, bathrooms, years built, and all that stuff. But since I know that stuff, I'm going to plug it in now. The other thing that's important is the address here. The CMA is going to geocode this property. So on the page where it shows the map of the property and where the comparable sales are, it needs to know the address so it can know where the subject property is and can drop a pin on it. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in here. 1710 Rose Hill, Reynoldsburg, Ohio, 43068. I'm not going to bother with putting the picture in there. If I'm going to send this to Dom, which I probably will go and plug that picture in, but I'm not going to do it right now. And the way that I would do that, I would probably just pull this up on my cell phone and do a screenshot of this street view and edit it in my phone to where it's just the house, email it to myself, and then upload it into this to this spot here on the CMA. I'm not going to do that right now because it would take up time, and I want to get onto the net to seller sheet. So this stuff, same thing here. You can plug all this in. I'm not going to do it right now. I would if I was going to send this to him right now. I'm going to do it later, but I would go through here and plug in the bedrooms, bathrooms, total baths, square footage, style, basement, not basement, taxes for the year, all that stuff. I'm not going to do it right now. I don't want to bore you guys, but so we're going to go ahead and select next as though we have plugged that stuff in. As you can see here, because I put the address in, it geocoded the property to its exact location, which is what we want. So click use this location. Next, it's going to show us the comps. We still have the ability to remove or add comps here. We've already gone through the trouble of narrowing this down, so I'm comfortable with these comps. I feel really good about them, so I'm going to keep the ones I have. This next page, adjustments. Full disclosure here, disclaimer. I have never done or attempted to do adjustments on these properties. I know that when appraisers appraise a home, they have a very meticulous equation for deducting value or adding value to comparable properties based on their features. So if one had a little bit more square footage, they would have a ratio for that to how it would affect the value. If one had a 2-car garage compared to a 1-car garage, an appraiser would have an equation for how to deduct or to add value on this. I do not. We already went to the trouble of really narrowing this down, so I don't want to mess with it anymore. If somebody knows the science of how to adjust these, feel free to share that with the group, but I have never used it and I've never had a problem not using it. So we're just going to select next. All right, here's our pricing analysis. So this is all the statistical information that we saw on the quick CMA a few minutes ago when it showed us the average days on market, average list price, average sold price, all that stuff. We're going to look at that here as well and just kind of, we can't change anything here. We're just looking at it and verifying it. So we know the average sales price overall is 252,000 for the comps. The low is 245, the high is 260. And it's got some other statistical averages for pricing on there as well. All that looks hunky-dory, so we're going to select next. And here is where we can make our suggestions. So when I send this to Dom in an email, I'm going to let him know, hey, Dom, looking at the neighborhood, depending on the finishes, the high end of the comps is going to be 260. The low end is going to be 245. My recommendation for this property, now it's taken this from the average, 252.5 is from the average. But I know from looking at those comps that one that was almost identical, the same layout, the same build to 1710 Rose Hill sold at 255. So that's going to be my recommendation. That one actually sold probably 6 or 7 months ago. So I might even come in here and say 257 just for appreciation purposes over the past 6 or 7 months since that one has sold. So I'm going to say, hey, Dom, my opinion of the ARV of that property with what I would call middle to high end upgrades would be $257,000. That's my opinion of the market value, or in this case, the ARV, the after renovated value. Now, whatever you put here, it's gonna show as recommended, and we'll see that in a second on the finished product of the CMA. This is the last part of the CMA. You can add or deduct pages here based on your liking. The CMA is usually like, depending on how many comps you have, it's usually about 7 or 8 pages long. You can make it longer or shorter by adding or deducting things here. I like the way it comes, so I don't mess with it too much. The only one adjustment I do make on this page is the color. And Mark D'Andrea was clever enough I had never messed with it. I was a realtor for three years before I joined AMP. And the first CMA I ran with him, he said, you know what, we're at Red One Realty, so I like to change the color to red. So they have a crimson option on here, which goes with our theme. If that's against your branding, don't worry about it. If you use gold or something else in all your branding material and stuff. So I changed the color scheme to red, and this puppy's ready to go. So what I'll do is I'll save it. Actually, I won't save it. I'm sorry. I'm going to view it. That's going to open it up on a different page on its own little tab up here. And this is going to show me in a nutshell, what it's going to look like. You can see the map here. You can see the comps where they land in comparison to our subject property, which is this red pin right here. And you can see what information is going to show up on the CMA. We would typically have a picture of our subject property here. Here's all the comps, 2 pages of comps. Here's the list sold and adjusted prices and where our recommendation falls within those prices. Here's the low, average, median, and high sold prices for the comps. And you can see ours is sitting a little bit closer to the top because we've got a really strong comp right there at 255 that sold about 7 or 8 months ago. And then you can see the statistical averages for days on market, sold versus list, all that stuff. And then before it gets to the pictures of all the comps, it'll show the listing price recommendation here, which we know that the high is 260, the low is 245, and our recommendation is 257. And then it shows the comps. And that is the CMA in a nutshell. I'm going to, typically when I press save, it gives me the option to, I wonder why it's doing that. Print. I'm not seeing the download option here, which I typically do. So I did something wrong along the way. I'm not sure what. I don't know if it's my internet or what's going on, but typically there's an option down here that says download. And the way that I don't usually share these through the MLS, I'll usually download this as a PDF. And that option is typically down here. I'm not sure why it's not right now. Maybe if I do print, it'll let me. Okay, here we go. Save as PDF. Okay. So typically there's a download option down there. I'm only doing this because it's not there right now for some reason, but I'm going to save it as a PDF and it's going to achieve the same goal. And then I'll call this Rose Hill CMA. Boom. Now that thing's locked, loaded, and ready to get fired off to my investor client. I'm going to move on to the net to seller sheet, but real quickly, I just want to touch base with everybody here watching. How was that? Does that seem achievable for you? Is there anything you didn't understand about that process? Does it seem okay to you? Have you ever done it before? Good, bad, ugly? Any feedback at all from those on the call?
Hey Justin, I have a quick question.
Yes,
I thought
Michelle.
that was great. That I learned a couple things off of that, so thank you.
My
Do
pleasure.
you also do the RPR comp that way, or do you just use the MLS?
Okay, so let's talk about RPR for a second. RPR is a very powerful tool that we all have access to through our membership with the Board of Realtors. RPR is great. It's a great tool. I'll use it if I'm. Let me answer this as best as possible. If I'm having trouble comping a property using this method, Michelle, I will go to the RPR and see what the RPR has to say about my comps or about my suggested price. The RPR report is much longer and in much further detail than this CMA is from the MLS. But I also think it gets to a point where it's a little bit convoluted and it might be a little bit harder to digest or to decipher for the clients, if that makes sense. Now, the RPR, you can remove a lot from that one as well and get it down to a really concise, maybe just a 2 or 3 page report. I've certainly seen where that's possible. Long story short, though, I use this, and if I'm having trouble with this, I will use the RPR to consult and maybe to back up an indication of what I think the ARV is or what I think the market value is. But the RPR is not my first go-to when it comes to comping properties. But like I said at the beginning of this, everybody has different strategies, and the RPR, a lot of people do use it and do swear by it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep, it did. I kind of used when I went to my listing appointment, I used both, and I kind of came up with a suggested sale price that was kind of between both numbers.
Okay. Yeah, and
So
that's very similar to how I've used it in the past as well.
okay.
The only thing I would caution there, and I'm curious to how that went over with your client. The only thing I would be worried about is like presenting 2 different numbers to them and then saying, like differing opinions and, well, which one do we go with? And you did the smart thing by splitting the difference and going in the middle. But to me, I feel like it might show, and just me personally with my clients, I feel like I might be a little bit more confident if I just come in with one number from the get-go and say, hey, this is the report. This is what I think the value is. And I've also, and you could even mention, and I've also cross-referenced this with other sources of information as well, meaning the RPR, and present it that way. But I have no issue with how you handled that. How did that go over with your client?
It went pretty good, and it really it went in contract like 4 days. So
Awesome.
it went pretty good. But that does make sense what you said. So I think that it would make me feel a little more confident because that was my first listing, so I was a little nervous. But it did go over pretty good though.
Man, we all are, trust me, Michelle. I remember my first listing appointment, and when it comes to these CMAs and these reports, every client is different. Some of your clients for these reports will dissect. They'll try to, and this goes to personality types, and there's a whole study on yellow, green, red, these different personality types and how they interact with you. Some people will open this report up and read every number, every page, And some people will say, okay, great, and not even look at it, you know? So, my first, getting back to what we were talking about, my first listing appointment, I unfortunately had a client that wanted to read every single page, and I didn't even know half the stuff that I had printed out on the report. So, I know how stressful those situations can be, and it sounds like you handled it great. Good job. We do have a
Thank you.
couple questions here in the chat. Harold said, I had a meeting with Mark yesterday to figure comps on a property I want to list. He said he likes to do 10% to compare square footage. How do we know what is best square footage size to use since you're using 300 square foot? I think that, what would that percentage be? So if it was 1,300 total times 0.10, that would be, so 10% would be 130 below, 130 above. I think that's too tight of a range, honestly, Harold, in my opinion. I like to open it up a little bit because, there's going to be some differing square footage amounts out there, and I want to get a full scope of the comps that are available to me out there. That's why I use 300 up and 300 down. It's really up to you at the end of the day what you feel comfortable with. You could use the 10% and then, man, I sound like an idiot now. I could have done that math in my head, but I'm on the spot here. You could use that 10%, but that's going to give you a really tight range, in my opinion. Mark D'Andrea's word is gospel to me, so I trust what he says. But if you did use that 10% and you got into a situation where you maybe weren't coming up with the amount of comps that you felt comfortable with, then you could resort back to the 300 up, 300 down scenario, which is what I use. Hopefully that answers your question. Kristen said, what do you do if the surrounding properties are very different? For example, if the home is over or under built for the area, or under the same question, if a property has a larger amount of land compared to the other houses around. That's a great question, Kristen. And like I said, appraisers are going to have exact equations for how to deduct and add value based on those characteristics. Hopefully, if there are enough comps out there, you can get a comfortable range, and then you can try to start to do the math in your head. I have a listing that I just put on the market that has 0.56 acres, and most of the comps had a little bit less, so I bumped it up a couple thousand. Now, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, you could go and look at land values in the area, see what they're selling for per acre, and take that number and deduct or add it to your suggested list price to try to adjust it that way. At the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to your confidence in the property and your confidence in the market. And if you run into a situation like that, reach out and ask for help. And we'll steer you in the right direction until you've done it enough times where you can say, okay, well, this one's underbuilt for the market a little bit. So, maybe we'll say a suggested list price is maybe $3,000 less than the other ones that it might be built a little bit better. Or if it's got half the acreage the other one does, maybe we'll compensate for that by listing it a couple $1,000s less or $5,000 less, depending on what average acreage is selling for in the neighborhood. Sorry, I know that's a long-winded answer to that question, but hopefully it helps. Harold said, I use the 300. It gives me about my pleasure, Kristen. I use the 300. It gives me about a $30,000 difference. Harold, if you want to reach out to me specifically, I can help you with that comp if you're interested to. Not all of them are going to work out as perfectly as the one I just did. This one had 7 extremely close, extremely strong comps. Not all of them are going to work out that way. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit more difficult to determine that value. And that range is going to be a little bit wider. In that scenario, I would rely heavily on the average sold price, even if it is a $30,000 difference. I would look at the average as our middle point, our base, and then go up or down based on the materials and the condition of the property inside. Hopefully that makes sense. And if you need help with that specific scenario, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call with you. Or, if you want to send me the address, I'd be more than happy to help you comp that as well. My pleasure, buddy. Okay, it's 6:52, guys. I want to move on to the net to seller sheet because I call this the 1-2 punch. The CMA is the jab, and the net to seller sheet is the right straight for the knockout. I call it that because if you run into somebody at a party or you DM somebody online during your prospecting and they give you an address, if you have the address, you can give them the CMA and you can give them the net to seller sheet. And that should be enough information for them to impress them to get your foot in the door for a listing appointment. So these two always go hand in hand with me for my buyer, seller, investor clients. So Vault Title is obviously our in-house title company. I don't just use them because they're our in-house title company. I use them because they do an incredible job for I've never had an issue with them. People that have had little issues with them, they have remedied it and made it right. Nicole, Alicia, Sally, I think there's one more girl in the office. I'm not sure what her name is, but they do an incredible job. They're right there in the office. I can pop upstairs and ask them a technical question if I want to. Their website has this net to seller sheet. If you're not using this, I strongly encourage you to start doing so. Go to Google Vault Title net to seller, go on there, create your account so that you can jump back in it quickly at any time. We got one in the chat here. Does the buyer or seller, Harold asked, does the buyer or seller typically determine which title company they use? That's a great question, Harold. I'm going to touch on this quickly and then we're going to get on to the net to seller sheet. In Central Ohio, well, at the end of the day, whoever's paying for the title insurance policy gets to pick who the title company is, in my opinion. Now, regionally, that changes. Right? In Central Ohio, it is baked into the contract that the sellers are responsible for purchasing the title insurance policy and therefore get to pick the title company. But I do real estate deals in Eastern Ohio on the border on the Ohio River where I grew up as well, where it's the opposite. In their contracts there, the buyer is the one paying for the title insurance policy. So therefore they get to pick the title company. At the end of the day, the answer is just like our commissions, it's negotiable. You can write it into the contract that even if it's Central Ohio and your buyer's making the offer, you could write it into the contract that your buyer is going to pay for the title insurance policy and your buyer is going to get to pick the title company. So long story short, Central Ohio seller typically gets to determine who the title company is because they are purchasing and paying for the owner's title insurance policy for the people buying the house. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, net to seller sheet. So once you've created your account on Vault Title's net to seller website, you can log in and it's going to look like this. This part is going to be already filled in with your name, your company, your email, your contact information. The next thing I'm gonna fill this out as if I'm gonna send this to my client this evening. So that we know the property address is 1710 Rose Hill. Can't remember if it was Rose Hill Road or Drive or what. Rose Hill Road. So 1710 Rose Hill Road. You get the idea. Type the address in. Make sure you got the county correct. In this instance, it's going to be Franklin County. And then you can put the seller's name in. My guy, his name is Dom Valenti, so I'm going to put his name in here. I have trouble typing when I'm on this Zoom for some reason. I think it's the pressure from you guys watching. All right, so now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the net to seller sheet. So we've got our sales details page here. And what I like to do is it gives us, I love this net to seller sheet because it is, I've looked at a ton of them, like Northwest Title has one, PM Title has one. I like Vaults because it is very simple, very straightforward, and I'll touch on one other reason I really like it a lot as well in a second. Sales price. It gives us 3 different options here. Just off memory, we know that CMA, the low is 245, the high is 260. Our suggested is 257. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to give him 3 ranges that I feel comfortable with. I'm probably going to say, let's say 252 on the low side of what I think it would go for. 257 is our baseline of what I think it's worth. And then let's go another 5 up, which would be what, 262? I'm terrible at math. I'm dyslexic. 262. So we got 3 ranges here. 252, 257, and 262. We got a $10,000 range there that I feel strongly about that property falling into. Now the mortgage payoff. If you are conducting this net to seller sheet for a buyer client, and you're comfortable enough with them for them to share their mortgage payoff with you, you can plug that information in here and make it make this estimate extremely, extremely close to what they're gonna what their net proceeds are gonna be. That's for a seller client. I'm sorry, I might have said buyer. That's for a seller client. So try to find out what their mortgage payoff is if you've got that kind of relationship with them, and you can plug it in. If not, you can tell them to plug it in after you send it to them. It'll still give them the same number. For your buyer client, you don't have to worry about this right now. We're just for the buyer client, we're not even going to send a net to seller sheet, so we're not going to worry about that. The CMA is great for a buyer client because it shows that they have it listed right or listed low or listed high. It gives evidence to all those things. For the investor client, I have in the past plugged in their rehab costs in here in the first mortgage payoff slot, and I've also plugged in their holding costs, which would be their interest only payments on their hard money loan, their estimated utilities while they're renovating the property. You can plug that information in here to narrow it down even farther. So the seller get their mortgage payoff. If it's an investor, try to figure out how much the rehab and holding costs are, and you can plug those in there to make this really, really accurate. I don't know what the rehab cost is on this. My client didn't send it to me, so I'm going to leave it blank for now. All right, this is one of the other reasons I really like the net to seller sheet on Vault Title's website. The buyer brokerage commission and selling brokerage commission. When you plug these in here, they just show up as a percentage. Now, we all know commissions are negotiable. They always have been. Okay, so we're not trying to demand that this is what the number is going to be, but this is an estimate. And what I like about this, it does not show the exact dollar amount of what this percentage is. And you know, take it for what it is. It just hits better. It just lands better on the client this way. They just see a percentage. So in this instance, you know, for giving this to a seller client, you know, these numbers matter to them because this is what they're paying in commission. You know, it's a lot easier for them to see 3% on there than for them to see 7,700 in one and 7,700 in the other. So it's a little bit more palatable for your client. So 333, 333, that's negotiable. Everybody knows that. I'm gonna keep saying it though. All of the title fees are already plugged in here from Vault Title, so there's no guesswork related there. The owner's policy is there. The title and escrow fees are there. The state and local transfer fees are there. The only remaining thing we have to do is plug in the tax information because the sellers are responsible for the taxes up until the date of sale. So there's going to be tax proration on the settlement statement, which is going to affect their net proceeds at the end of the day. So the way we determine their tax proration is it's asking us for what are the half year taxes for this property. So we're going to go back to the auditor's page and we are going to look at their tax and payment information, and we're going to see what their annual taxes are. Okay, we can see their total annual taxes are $32,95.80. $32,95.80 divided by 2 is $16,47.9. So we're going to go back to our net to seller sheet. We're going to type in $16,47.9. You could round up. You don't have to be that specific. And then it's asking for the date that it's going to sell because that's going to determine how much proration is going to happen for the year. So if we market it, if we put this house on the market tomorrow, let's say it closes 8/9 or 8/10. So we're going to put 8/8/8, 10. Oh, sorry, I messed up. 10/10/10. And that is going to give us our numbers. So again, the buyer's not going to get this net to seller sheet, but the seller client and the investor client are, and they're going to be able to see their net proceeds there. And then all we do is generate a PDF, just like we did with the CMA. We download that to our computer. I'm going to say Rose Hill net to seller. And then we've got our 1-2 punch done. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to compose an email. And actually, I just sent one today, so I'm just going to let you guys look at it. This is for a property in Steubenville, Ohio, where I was born and raised. And it says, "Hi, Jocelyn. Nice meeting you and chatting with you guys the other night. I ran into this couple at a 4th of July party, and I was talking real estate with somebody, imbuing my life with real estate, like Mark D'Andrea says. And you know, they need to sell their house. So I got their address, I got their email addresses, and this is what I sent them. Nice meeting you, chatting with you guys. Attached below are a couple documents. The CMA, or comparable market analysis, is a report of the comparable sales in your neighborhood and an estimate of the market value of your home, which is $178,000 in my opinion. My suggested list price for your property, if I were to list it tomorrow, would be $179,900. Just based off numbers and statistics and not having seen it in person yet. I don't want to lock into that number because I haven't walked that property. It might smell like dog pee. It might, you know, it might be immaculate. I'm not sure how it's going to look. Next, net to seller. This sheet shows you your net proceeds after all state and local transfer fees, commissions, taxes, and title costs. I ran the numbers at 3 different sale prices, 170, 175, and 180. Just subtract your mortgage payoff amount from the bottom numbers on the page to determine your net proceeds. Hope this information helps. The next steps would be to meet in person to walk the property or to narrow down some of these numbers and take notes, discuss, get pictures, and get it on the market. Please let me know if you have any questions or would like to schedule a walkthrough. And then I attach both of those at the bottom and I fire it away. And they texted me immediately afterwards, and they've already set up the appointment with me. So the 1-2 punch worked again. I got a question in the chat. This is Christian. I only got to see a portion of this meeting. Will the recording be posted somewhere? Yes, Christian. The recording of this should be on the AMP YouTube page within 48 hours of this meeting. I'm going to send it to Mark. Mark does a little bit of editing, and then he posts it to the YouTube page. So keep an eye out, Christian. If you don't see it within a day or so, shoot me a text message and remind me, and I will get it sent to you personally as quickly as possible. Okay. So we just did CMA, net to seller sheet. Still got 15 people on the call here. I want to get your guys' opinions on what we just went over real quickly, and then I have just 1 or 2 things to talk about. Anybody have any feedback, any questions? Did you not understand it? Was it palatable for you?
Hi, it's Kelsey.
Hey, Kelsey.
First of all, I apologize. My kid is playing Fortnite, so you're probably hearing that in the background. So I wanted to ask you, this is for your investor client. So you said it's an ARV. So he is trying to figure out if he buys his property and gets it all flipped and fixed up, what he could sell it for, right?
Correct.
So that's why you would give him the net to seller paper.
Yeah, because so on the net to seller for an investor client, the information I'm going to put in that mortgage payoff section is going to be how much they're paying for the property, how much their rehab is, and how much their holding costs are going to be. And you can either put that all in the first mortgage payoff as one number, or you can separate it if you want to. But I know that like, let's say this guy's a wholesaler, so he just wants to know what to market it for, you know, for his wholesale contract. For your typical flipper, they're going to have what they're going to pay for it, or potentially going to pay for it, as well as what they think it's going to cost to renovate it, as well as their holding costs. Those are the 3 buckets of money on their side that you can plug into that. And if you were to let's go back to the net to seller real quick. And I just want to talk through some of these chats real quick while we do this, Kelsey. Matt Veer says, wait, my kids are playing Fortnite too. Carla says, very thorough. Thank you. Thank you, Nara. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Harold. Let's go back to the net to seller real quick. So when I run these for my investor clients, they would tell me, we've got the ARV in there, what it's going to sell for. Let's say they were going to purchase this property off market or maybe on market. Let's say they were getting it for $150,000. Let's say it needed $40,000 worth of rehab. So that's going to take this number up to 190. And let's say they've got hard money involved, and they've got holding costs and utilities while it's there, and insurance while they're holding it. So let's say they've got another $6,000 in what I would call holding costs. So if we come down here, that'll tell me, as you can see now, the net proceeds have changed significantly. But this is the amount of profit that potential investor client could be looking at for this flip deal if these numbers were accurate to their situation. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so the other part of that question I wanted to ask is, a lot of times when I'm showing houses to clients, a lot of times I get people saying, "Oh, Kelsey, I just don't think this house is worth this," and then they'll ask me to do a comp like on a house that they're looking to buy so they want me to tell them whether or not they think that is a good price to be listed at.
Yes.
So do you go through all of this, or do you maybe do one of the quicker ones, or
For the buyer client,
for a buyer client?
it
Yeah.
depends on your relationship with them. If they're newer and maybe you haven't looked at a house with them before and you're trying to develop that rapport and that trust, I would send them a full CMA like we developed earlier for this property, which you're seeing here on the screen. And I would say, hey, buyer client, based on the comparable sales that have taken place within the last 6 months within a half mile of this property that are all ranch, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes between 1,000 and 1,600 square feet, the average list price or the average sold price is 252,000, and the high end is 260, the low end is 245, and the property we looked at today is at X. So therefore, I think it is, and it would either be overpriced or underpriced or priced correctly. And then the other part of that conversation is I have also reached out to the listing agent, and this there's a couple branches it could go here. The listing agent has indicated that they have no offers on the table at this time, not a lot of activity on the property. So I think that we have a little bit of leverage to come in at or maybe slightly below list price. Or the other branch of that conversation is I've reached out to the listing agent and they've indicated that they have a ton of activity. They've got 3 offers on the table. They're expecting another 2 offers. And in my opinion, if we want to get this property, we need, if your decision is that you want this property, we will need to be a little bit more aggressive with our offer strategy. I hope I didn't just talk for a mile and not make any sense. I hope that made sense for you, Kelsey, and answers your question.
Yeah, that helps a lot. I haven't had the opportunity to do as many CMAs for listings yet because I've been more on the buyer side, but now I'm understanding it better. Thanks.
You're welcome. Absolutely. The CMA is a powerful tool for a buyer, for a seller client, for an investor client. Do it for your neighbors, do it for your own house, do it, just get in the groove of doing it. Once you do this 5, 10, 15 times, you're going to get really proficient at it and you're going to be able to bust it out really quickly and really accurately. Now, like we were talking about with Harold earlier, there's going to be, and David Fleischer pointed it out on the last time I gave this training, there's going to be rural properties where there's like no comps and you really got to get creative at that time. In those kind of situations, you might have to go back 2 years. You might have to go out 2 miles. You might have to make considerations for how many bedrooms and bathrooms you're filtering for. So not every one of these is going to be exactly the same. And they will vary wildly depending on the property. If it's rural, they get tough to comp. And those ones really test you. If it's more urban like this one is, or more in a subdivision, they're much easier. This one I lucked out was really easy to comp.
Hey Justin, this is Nara.
Yes, Nara.
It was a great presentation. So
Thank you, sir.
I had one question like, is there any other platform or website where we can run the comps easily, like than the FlexMLS?
Yeah, so as we discussed
Is there
earlier, the RPR is an option to run comps. And we have access to that for free through our board membership. So you can go to RPR, they have an app. You can log in using your CR dot whatever the numbers are, your login information there. So that's a good way to comp it. Other than that and the MLS, I really haven't used any other strategies. And now I'm also in a different MLS as well, so I use a separate MLS for houses in that region. But when it comes to developing a CMA, the MLS and RPR are the 2 that I have used and that I have experience with.
So does RPR pull the same, like maybe 3 or 4 sold comps?
RPR gets really in depth. They will pull every comp that has ever existed known to mankind, depending on how you set your filters. RPR, in my opinion, like I was talking with, I think it was Michelle earlier, RPR is really, really in depth. And I do like certain aspects of that. RPR will tell you exactly which, like not just a school district, it'll tell you the elementary school, the middle school, the high school. It'll tell you the parks in the neighborhood. It'll tell you amenities. It'll get really, really into depth on that kind of stuff. So RPR is a powerful tool. It might be a little bit overkill in my opinion. I really like the MLS. I like how easy it is. I like the user friendliness of it. And I like how it looks on the other end to the client as well. It looks easy to digest, whereas I think RPR is, you can kind of get into the weeds really quickly with some of those reports from the RPR.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, real quickly, guys, if nobody else has a question, if you do, pop it up in the chat. Red One, I said it at the beginning of the meeting, some people weren't on. Red One Realty is a great brokerage. They provide a lot of support to us, and there are changes happening in our industry. You guys are all aware of this, the NAR settlement in particular. Admin sent out an email earlier today. I'm popping it up on the screen here if you haven't seen it. Mike Hall and Ken Fairchild will be holding 4 separate training classes on the NAR changes and how we can prepare and adapt in our business. Wednesday, July 24th, 2 to 3 p.m. This is going to be an AMP training as well. Tuesday, July 30th, 6 to 7 p.m. Saturday, August 10th, 10 to 11 a.m. Friday, August 16th, 1 to 2 p.m. Make sure you get one of those dates that's comfortable for you and register ahead of time, because there's 900 people in our brokerage, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be wanting to sit in on these. So please, I'm going to read their statement here. As you're all aware, there are some changes coming to our industry next month, and our continued efforts to keep you up to date and ahead of the curve. We will be outlining the changes and new requirements during a 1-hour Zoom meeting that will be offered on 4 different dates over the next month. Due to the importance of these changes in the industry, it is mandatory that all agents attend at least one of these sessions. We wanted to send out these dates now in advance so that notice is given and arrangements can be made to attend these live sessions. While one or more of these sessions may be recorded, it will be requested for all agents to register and attend a live session, as attendance cannot be tracked on the replays and recordings. Please be sure to register as early as possible because space is limited. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. Let's stay on top of these changes and continue to have the best, most informed agents in the industry. I think that's very well put by our brokers and our admin staff. So check your email, check your calendars, get registered on those. Get ready for the changes. The AMP program, we're going to be following suit as well. We're going to keep you guys as informed as possible. We're not inciting panic, but we also, I'm of the opinion that their changes are going to happen. There is likely to be a bit of a downward pressure on buyer agents' commissions. It's going to be more important now, more than ever before, in our business to be able to describe our value in a very strong and confident way, to describe the value that we bring to these situations, and to be able to negotiate our commissions. Because it's not going to be, I don't anticipate it going to 0 on the first day and buyer commissions disappearing. I do not anticipate that to happen at all. But I do expect a downward pressure on them just because of the conversations that are happening. And we all want to be ahead of that curve, and we want to be prepared and trained and comfortable having those conversations with buyer and seller clients. So please, please attend one of these meetings. Our brokers are telling us that it's mandatory. So please register and attend. Okay. So that was CMA Net to Seller AMP Tuesday training. I hope you guys got some value out of this. This has been recorded. I'm going to send it to Mark. He's going to post it on the YouTube page within 24 to 48 hours of this training. CMA Net to Seller, powerful tools. I call it the 1-2 punch, especially if you're trying to get your foot in the door for a listing appointment. All you need is the address and their email address, and you can knock these out pretty easily. You guys are doing a great job. I've been connecting with a ton of AMP agents who are doing their first buyer or seller deal, doing their first new build, writing contracts, comping properties. The growth has been amazing. The progress has been amazing. So I want you guys to keep it up and reach out to me If you need anything, recently you all got a version that has all of the amp leaders' contact information on it. You can call us one by one if you want to. Call Mark Hutchison, call Mark D'Andrea, call myself, call Sheila, call Dana, Malika. We're all here for you guys. So if you need anything, reach out. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and put an end to this Zoom. I thank you guys all for joining tonight. As usual, you're great. Thank you for your time and keep crushing it out there. And if you need me, reach out and let me know. All right, guys. Thank you. Go enjoy your families. Have a great evening. If you need anything, give me a shout.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
My pleasure, buddy.
Thank you, Justin.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir. I don't even know how to shut this thing off. This new update's got me. I guess we'll just close it here. There it is. Boom. See you guys.